Good afternoon. So I'm Barb and I am a school nutrition director at Hopkins Public Schools. And it is right outside of the metro area, Minneapolis, St. Louis Parks, and Hopkins Public Schools. We serve about 16 different communities in this area, from Minnesota to Hopkins, Eden Prairie, St. Louis Park, Plymouth, Crystal, yeah, like I said, 16 different communities, so quite a few communities we serve. We have an enrollment of around 7,000 students, and we have about 36% free and reduced. We have some very high need schools and some very high income schools. So we have, and then schools in between. So we have a variety of customers that we work to meet the expectations and needs of. We've been doing farm to school here in Hopkins since about 2010. And yeah, I think that's where I'll leave it off for Emily to go into her introduction and her presentation.
Thank you. Hi, guys. My name is Emily Mayer. I work with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture in their grants department. And what I will be talking about today is our wonderful farm to school grants that we have available. Sort of just giving a general overview, and then there's also room for questions at the end. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share my screen. All right, can you guys see that? Perfect. And I have two screens, so I'm juggling here, but all right. So the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, we have two grants that we're currently offering for farm to school programs. So this is for fiscal year 22 funding. We have $748,000 available for schools in Minnesota to increase the amount of Minnesota grown and raised foods that they're using in their school lunch program. The application period is currently open, closing on November 4th, and purchases need to be completed by the end of, well, by August of 2023. In order to apply for these grants, you just need to go onto our website. We have an online portal that's linked on there. It's a fairly easy process. If you haven't applied for grants through the Department of Ag before and have issues, feel free to reach out to me and I can help you with that. So the two grants that we have currently available are the First Bite Mini Grant, which is intended for schools who are new to farm to school. This grant offers up to $5,000. There's no match required, just to sort of help people start their farm to school programs at their schools. We also have a full tray grant, and that's available for schools who have some prior farm to school experience. So maybe you've done the apple crunch in the past, and now you want to start to develop your programming more and incorporate more local foods into your lunchroom. So the amount available for that is up to $35,000. There's an equation that I'll sort of run through in a minute, but it's dependent upon your national school lunch program size. For this grant, there is a 1-to-1 match requirement. So those are the two main, the First Bite and the full tray. If you're applying for either of those two grants, you're also eligible to apply for up to an additional $25,000 to purchase equipment that would be used in your farm to school programming in your kitchen. And a 1-to-1 cash match is required for that as well. So just a little bit more specific info about the First Bite. A minimum amount of $2,500 up to $5,000 is the amount you can ask for. Like I said, there's no match required. The focus is on intentional high impact farm to school efforts. So this is again for schools who haven't dipped their toes in the water yet, who might want to do the Great Lakes Apple Crunch this year or next year, who might want to start doing taste tests, who might want to try one food from a local farm in their school. This grant is to sort of help you figure that out. Letters of support are not required for this grant because you should just be developing the relationships with your local farmers and producers. So it's really an asset for schools who are just starting. If you are from a school or a district who has done farm to school work in the past, then you would want to apply for the full tray grant. Like I said, up to $35,000 per school district is available for that, but it's based on your October of 2019 school lunch numbers. So the equation to figure out how much your school is eligible for is the number of meals served times 10 cents times 10 months. So the example, 7,500 reimbursable lunches plus 5,000 breakfasts times 10 cents times 10 months means that this school would be eligible for $12,500. And like I mentioned before, there is a one-to-one cash match required for this grant. So if you do request $12,500 in grant funds, you would need to match that with additional local food purchases. So we're sort of doubling the reach and the stretch of this money. And the goal is to enable new and more sustained farm to school purchases. So maybe you have a relationship with the local apple farmer, but now you want to sort of, start incorporating more products, different types of products into your lunches. Because these applicants would have some prior experience with local producers, letters of support are required. So a letter from the producers who you're planning on working with are required. You can also submit letters from distributors if you work with food distributors, identifying the farms that they work with or they purchase from, and also community partners who might support your program. So if the school is partnered with the local SHIP office, a SHIP letter would be a really great addition to an application, that kind of thing. So products that are eligible for both grants, fruits, vegetables, meat, fish, and poultry, dairy, excluding fluid milk, eggs, and grain. So items that are not eligible would be fluid milk. School garden produce is not an eligible item, and items that were not grown or produced in Minnesota. So if your cafeteria works with the school garden, you can still do that, but you cannot request grant funds for that. And then, like I said, there's the additional, with both grants, there's the additional equipment requests that you can ask for. You can add that onto your application. So that would be equipment that is going to go into your school kitchens or cafeterias. That's going to help you to buy, prepare, and serve more Minnesota grown and raised foods. So aside from your local food money that you're requesting, you can request an additional $25,000 to purchase equipment. You don't need to request the full amount. You could request $2,000 if you want, and then you need to match that request with a one-to-one, and that would either be additional local food that you're purchasing, or like the other portion or the other half of the cost of the equipment. This piece can be a little confusing, so please reach out to me with questions. In the RFP, it also has several different examples and scenarios that you can look at to figure out how to craft your application so you're maximizing your money. So please reach out though. So some examples of equipment that has been purchased in the past with our grants. I won't run through all of them, but it's basically anything that you can justify purchasing that will help your farm to school programming. So like blenders, robo-foos, combi ovens, sectionizers and cores, range burners, meat slicers. We've funded pasta makers before. So anything goes as long as you can justify that it's for your farm to school efforts. And then I just pulled together a list of our grantees from last year, just so you can sort of see in your area if there's, if you have connections, you want to reach out to some of these schools or districts to see. So we had both First Bite and Full Tray recipients last year. This information is also available on our website. So if you're interested in contacting somebody from one of these schools and you need their info, reach out to me and I can help you with that. You can also, as an applicant, you can request to see applications, up to 3 applications of previously funded grantees. So if you're new to grant writing or you're confused about how to, word something or how to ask for what you need, you can also reach out to me and I can help you get some applications so you can use those as a reference throughout the process. I also just want to do a little plug for Minnesota grown promotional items. If you have local foods that you're featuring in your cafeteria or at your schools, we have a lot of materials that you can go onto our website on minnesotagrown.com and request. We'll send them right to your school for free, and that just helps to promote local foods. You can write the farm, you can put a picture of the farmer on these items just so that kids are starting to build those connections of where their food is coming from. So if you're interested in these, go on minnesotagrown.com. And that's all I have. So my email is on there. If you have questions, again, reach out to me. Also, our Farm to School website has the links for both RFPs and how to get onto the application portal. So any questions?
No, but I'm going to, unless Renee, do you have a question?
I do have a quick question, if possible. So Duluth has done quite a bit of Minnesota grown produce purchasing for the cafeteria, but not a lot regionally. Would we be able to qualify for a First Bite, or so in order to try and do more regional procurement?
Yeah, I think I would recommend, it sounds like you would be a better fit for the Full Tray, and you would have more funds that are available for you. So I would recommend that, since you've already sort of developed some relationships with local producers. But if you want to chat more offline, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, maybe I'll just follow up with you. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Can you put your email address in the chat?
Mm-hmm.
That way people have it right there. Sometimes easier. Are there more questions?
There can definitely be questions as you're navigating the grant application, but one of the things that if you're not with a school, but you're working with schools and supporting schools, we would love to see you to encourage all the schools that you're reaching out to apply for that grant, because either one of them are out there, they're available, and they're there to help. And so it's a really great opportunity.
And I know that Emily mentioned the Great Lakes Crunch, the Minnesota Crunch. And so I want to share with everyone the website for that. I'll put that first in the chat and then share it so that you can take a look at sort of what it looks like to register for the 2021. Everybody got that?
Yes.
Screen share. Here's where schools can register their, what did they say, Sarah? They want 1 million crunchers.
They want 1 million crunchers this
And
year.
I suggested that I could maybe do 10 crunches, but not any more than that. But I'll basically run through the page here. It's very simple. It goes from everything from Melvin, from early care and educational sites to local businesses to obviously school districts, is which we're here talking about. But it's all the way through a lot of wherever you eat, contact information, a bunch of other questions like this. Anyway, it's a great way for whether it's where you work or where your kids go to school, or if your school itself, to just kind of get your feet wet in really trying to be mindful of where your food comes from. And so really simple, encouraging people to do this. Just it's a great entree into local foods sourcing. So
And I don't
that's
know,
that.
I don't know if you noticed, but up there, it also offered you to provide this option for your family. So if you haven't registered for yourself, definitely register yourself. So commit to purchasing local apples for your family. It's the last option right there. Myself and my household or a social group. And you can just say it's my family that's making this a priority for us. The Great Lakes Apple Crunch takes place on Thursday, October 14th. And it's a really good opportunity for us to promote local for our apple eaters. Everybody loves apples. So any other questions for either Brett or for Emily before we hand it over to Barb? All right, Barb. You are
Right.
up. Today's
Well,
topic.
I'm
Do you want me to do an intro on today's topic?
yeah,
It gives you a
sure,
jump in.
Mhm.
So Barb, being a food service director, one of the things that I asked her about when doing this was just to find out if she could share some of her tips and tricks and secrets into budgeting and doing some creative budgets for farm to school to make that possible. Because as we are all very well aware, budgets at the schools can be difficult and complicated at best. And navigating that space is tricky. And so Barb was willing to share some of the tricks that she has done or some suggestions, some ideas as she's navigating that space as the food service director. Tag team.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. I was just gonna put out there, I'm sitting in my backyard, and so my dogs might start barking at other passerby dogs. So if you nobody's getting eaten alive or anything like that, they might sound like it, but they're gonna be right here by me. Yes, thank you for that introduction. I think there are no tips or secrets. It's really a lot of collaborative work that we did in our district with our team of cook supervisors and food production workers, where we would brainstorm on ways that we could incorporate farm to school and sometimes manage what might be that extra cost, especially when we were buying some of the organic foods from farms like Riverbend and I can't remember all the farms that we were buying our organic foods from. We haven't been buying much in the last year because of the pandemic, and honestly, it's we've been really trying this fall, and we are doing some, but it's really hard to get back into it because kitchens are very short-staffed. We have been open for 3 weeks at school, and most of our office staff has been out in the kitchens acting as production workers. And so it's kind of hard to get this ball rolling again when your time is just spent doing pots and pans and cooking and serving kids. But some of the ways that we have, gotten into this and found ways to make it work is the grants that Emily was talking about. We, I think, have received about 6 of those grants. Having the right equipment for the staff to do this work, because it's more challenging work to take produce from local farmers and prepare it and serve it to kids than it is to take cut produce from produce distributors and put it into pans and serve it. And so having the right equipment is uber important. And I'm reminded of that so much now working in the kitchen for 7 hours a day. I'm really grateful for the equipment that we got through MDA grants. And, I have thought of a few more things that maybe we should apply for now that I've been out there daily. The grants are very simple to apply for. They are not difficult at all. Before I wrote our first one for MDA, I had never written another one period. Like that was the first one that I ever wrote. We've had some of our dietetic students work with us on writing them so that they get some experience with it. But I just want to put that out there for school nutrition directors, because I think that there is this sense that these grants are so hard and difficult and challenging to write, but MDA has made it really quite easy to write one. And we have done things like getting mixers, floor stand mixers that we use to get local ground turkey and make meatballs or turkey patties or meatloaf from. We get local oats from whole grain milling and local cornmeal, and we make our own cornbread that the students have just come to adore. It's like one of their favorite things on the menu is our cornbread that we make for them. We use the oats to make our own granola so that we can control the amount of sugar that is in the granola, and we can vary it, and it's very inexpensive. We've used grants to purchase the nice combi ovens, the Rationale combi ovens. We've used grants to buy immersion blenders, which helps with making all kinds of sauces where we buy local herbs and add those to make our own dressings, like ranch dressing and a garlic Greek dressing. Most of the dressings in our schools are made from scratch. So they use immersion blenders for that. We use the immersion blenders for making a roasted tomato sauce. That was like our second year into really buying farm to school. Our primary partner, Greg Reynolds from Riverbend, talked with us about a project of taking produce and preserving it for use throughout the school year. And so his idea was to take tomatoes and make roasted tomato sauce and freeze it, and to pickle a bunch of cucumbers. And so that's what we did. And we used to track all of that quite closely for about 7 years. We haven't tracked it now for probably almost as many, about 6 years. But at the peak of it, we were buying like about 8,600 pounds of tomatoes from our different vendors a year and making like 700 gallons of roasted tomato sauce that the students absolutely loved, and so did our staff. They really didn't mind making it. Sophie, quiet. Sorry. Let's see. And so then the pickles, we have bought as many as 1,000 pounds of cucumbers and made them into pickles, which the students loved. We made all kinds, bread and butter, refrigerator, dill, and we just used them as long as we could in the fall time. As long as they were coming in, we would make them and put them out on the lines, and the students absolutely loved them. And I'm using past tense here because, again, the pandemic disrupted all of this. And we're trying to get into this again. We have a couple of schools that have made some roasted tomato sauce this fall, but not everybody has been able to yet.
I have a question for you on that, Barb. So when you're doing that preserving and that canning, are you doing that over the summer before the school starts, or are you doing that in addition to the school year?
We do it at different times. So we do it in the peak of harvest time in the fall. And then sometimes we have some leftover DOD funds that we don't know what we will do with them. And if you don't use DOD funds by June 30th, you lose them. And so our staff has ordered in a bunch of different produce to preserve other foods. Like they bought hundreds of pounds of strawberries one year and made some strawberry jam to go with bagels. They froze the jam. They brought in hundreds of pounds of tomatoes and again made roasted tomato sauce. They brought in hundreds of pounds of broccoli and they par blanched it and froze it. And they did that in June. So it was in between the end of the school year and the beginning of our summer meal programming. So, you know, using some of these other local channels like DoD, which can be hard to use funds from that locally. If you can use it up on just about anything, right? Then you've got funds left over that you can then channel towards your local purchasing from your regular budget. So we know that there isn't a lot in the DoD market that is local foods, and you know we're hoping to change that. Sarah talks about that all the time, trying to influence that gap certification thing that's required for that DoD. And but in the meanwhile, I mean, we can purchase what we can from there that we would normally purchase out of our regular budget, and then divert our regular budget to some local purchasing. Other things that we did to make things more affordable was we went slow. We did not go into all of the trucking and the local school purchases. We didn't like pull down a shade one night and all of a sudden everything disappeared. We went really slow, and then that helped us adjust to our changing conditions. But really what adjusted over a course of about 6 years was that when we were buying these local foods and processing it ourselves in our kitchens with this equipment that we got through grants, and we were also doing more scratch cooking with raw ingredients, raw ground beef, chicken, and all of those ingredients. And we were also moving towards doing like meatless Mondays. So we were lowering our food costs then, but our food costs changed from about 40% food costs down to 30 or 32% is where it goes to every year. So that's as an operating ratio. Well, labor is what changed then, right? So labor used to be around 50% of our operating budget, and now it's about 60%. So we're still spending that kind of money, but I like to say it's even uber local because we're keeping our tax dollars local by employing our employees locally in the district rather than somewhere else. So we're buying, we have money to buy local foods, and we're paying our local citizens those that money. So
Those are fabulous numbers, and I'm curious to see if your increase when you started serving more local and creating these items, if you saw an increase in students that were purchasing lunches.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. We saw an increase. Sorry, it's the little
You're
one.
fine.
Now it's the big one. The little one gets the big one started. And you're recording. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Yes, we did see a gradual increase in participation of the students too. The more that they tasted our local foods, the more they enjoyed the change in what we were offering them. For instance, like one dish that we started out with was a zucchini tomato mushroom saute. And it was quite good. It was a good recipe that we found. And we got students to eat it, but it wasn't very many, you know, like out of 200 kids, we could maybe sell 30 servings. But then we started buying Greg's organic, uber local, like fresh from the garden yesterday, picked the zucchini and tomatoes. And it completely changed the taste of the dish.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it looked different, it tasted different.
Yep.
And so then it changed from 25 or 30 kids per couple hundred to 50 kids. And then the next time it was 75 kids, you know, and then there just is more excitement in your program as they start getting excited by the different flavors and the different things that you're offering in the meal programs. But absolutely, participation. The parents wanted the kids to participate, knowing what we were offering. The kids were growing to be adventurous eaters, so participation picked up. you know, it's a couple of rough years though in the transition time, you know, and you're really trying to talk kids into like, this is good stuff. You should be excited about it. You should like it. I was just serving at the high school the other day and serving one of our dishes, Swedish meatballs over rice. And the line of high school students was backed up out the door. And this was like one of 10 different entrees that they could get, right? And it was the longest line. And I just chuckled because I looked at some of the kids in line in front of me. I said, do you realize that when you were in kindergarten and first grade, we had to talk you guys into trying these? And now, like, this is the entree of the day.
I have goosebumps thinking about it. That's so exciting. Now, was it as easy to get your staff engaged? This is a conversation you and I have had, but this sounds like it's extra work for the staff as well.
It is extra work for the staff, but they're really committed to it. They see the benefit in it. They see the value in it. And this last week, I was at a school where, you know, we're using one of the mixers to make some local meatballs, and for the Swedish meatball dish. And you know, I was helping with scooping up all the meatballs, and I said, you know, the kitchen literally has 2 staff members that are left in the kitchen. There's 4 people that were either out on medical leave or that we need to hire. And I said, you know, you guys could get some prepared meatballs in during this time because you are uber, you know, stressed for. They're like, no, we're gonna find a way to make this work for as long as we can. So you know, there's cooking is something that you do from the heart to the heart, right? You want to be proud of what it is that you're putting out to students. And when you are really invested in the production of it, there's more love in it, you know?
Yeah.
And the students, how you present it to them, how you talk to them about it, it's all different and it's much more rewarding.
If I recall, I think that you asked your staff about helping with recipe creations in the beginning, just to see if you can get them more engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. Our cook supervisors are all involved in the recipe development and the menu development. They have been from the beginning and they still continue to be every year. We have 3 different menu cycles, the fall, winter, spring, where we change out things seasonally, and they all participate in helping to decide what the winners and losers are and what gets replaced, and then developing a recipe. And we even, you know, the USDA has got a lot of regulations, but we give them leadway to kind of make the recipes their own in their buildings too. We don't believe so much in the homogenized, like, this recipe has to turn out exactly this way every time, you know? If they have leftover herbs that they want to use in the dish one time, they can use that. We ask them to just really pay attention that they're not altering the like the calorie and the dietary nutrition facts of the dish when they're altering it, so that, you know, students are on special diets and that, but they can still count on what's in the dish and what kind of carbs and all that kind of stuff are in the dish. So we try and give them some artistic room as well to add their own flair, and they do a lot of that with side dishes as well. We just had our back to school picnic and we got a bunch of produce from Greg at Riverbend Farms again, and we did a vegetarian dish that is eggplant, tomato, and feta bake, and that is going to make it onto our recipes to try for the kids because it was so incredibly delicious, and literally you wanted to get inside the pan and lick it. It was such a good dish. So we're going to try it with the kids, and all the adults there just loved it. So, but again, it's like, you know, local, organic, and it was just in the field the day before, and then the next day it's being cooked. Just what it tastes like.
Hey, Barb, when you're, I know that it would take some convincing for me to eat that, and Greg has given me untold numbers of different varieties of eggplant and says, you'll like this one, and I don't. But do you, but I'd still love Greg, it's fine.
Yeah.
But do you do any
Excuse me.
marketing to your customers, to those kids, to like get them hyped up for something that's coming down the pipeline, or do you spring it on them, or is there a Barb Matura like TikTok that we could subscribe
Yeah.
to? And
Well, we work a lot with our staff on doing training with them, and we did a lot through SHIP grants with our staff on how to be a good food coach and encourage kids to try different foods and how to cook different vegetables. And we really focus on vegetables because knowing that that's the harder thing to get kids to eat. So we would do those trainings with the staff, and then those trainings with our staff were followed up by some demonstration cooking of the recipes that we used with the staff. We would do demonstration cooking in the cafeterias, and then we would give students taste out in the cafeteria, and we would try and make the vegetable at least 2 different ways so that the kids could see that it tastes different based on a recipe. Like you might like it plain and raw, or you might like it in a salad, or you might like it cooked. And so we did those at like one year we focused on the secondary schools, the next year we focused on the elementary schools, and that made a huge difference. Like many students tried the foods when we were out in the cafeterias doing demonstration cooking, and gained a new found interest in some of these flavors and foods. So that was super helpful.
Wow. I love it. I love it. I want to see if anybody has any questions for Barb as she's sharing these stories, because it just is inspiring. I want the eggplant recipe. I'm also not an eggplant fan. But I've heard so many people talking about eggplant this year. It's just mind-boggling. So I'd love that recipe.
I will send it to you. Honestly, I'm not a huge eggplant fan either, but this is a really great recipe.
Oh, I'm so excited. Does anybody have any recipes, any questions for Barb as she's continues on with her story here? I love it. Renee.
Can you tell us a little more about the demonstration cooking? How did you facilitate that in the cafeteria?
We had our cook supervisors sign up to lead the staff trainings that I said we did first, so that they trained our staff on how to make the dishes. And then those cook supervisors went to each one of the schools to then do the demonstration cooking out in the cafeteria, and we got a substitute for them back at their home school on the days that they were out. Myself and one of our assistant directors, who was partially at that time paid for through a SHIP grant, would go out to provide assistance. We would try and include the school leadership, because the school leadership, if they were really supportive and engaged with it, then the students were going to be that much more likely to be excited to try the new foods. But we had, those little butane burner type things. We would set those up on tables out in the cafeteria and cook on them. We usually did one cooked, one raw, like coleslaw. I can't remember what it is that we did with the coleslaw. One was a really great slaw recipe, and I can't remember what we did with the cooked cabbage, but we did each way. And we just gave out little cups with taste tests to the kids as they came up to the table and had them try it. And then at the elementary schools, we did kind of a eat good food campaign, and we would send out the results of like how many kids tried it, and how many kids thought that they would eat it again and definitely would eat it again. And it was always the majority of kids who thought they would, and definitely like the higher choices. And we did that to, you know, just encourage the kids, like they wouldn't be the only ones liking it, you know, like the majority of the kids were going to be adventurous and try it. And then we made sure that we followed up and put that food on the menus. That was one of the mistakes that we made early on when we were doing some taste testing, like one of our first years. We were doing some pickled beets, and the kids were really enjoying them, and we were just all tickled with ourselves. And oh my gosh, kids like beets now if you pickle them and everything. And we were so happy with it. Well, then about a week or two later, a student in the lunch line said, "Hey, you guys had those pickled beets and we really liked them, but how come you never have them on your serving line?" And it's just like, oh, duh. Note to self, if you do taste testing, you should make sure you put it on the menu right afterwards to reinforce. So we learned that lesson early on, to reinforce whatever taste testing you do by putting it on the serving line as soon as possible.
How did you track whether or not it was a liked item? Did you do that taste testing during lunch, I would assume? And then did they taste it while they were getting it from you so that you could hear their feedback, or was it before they got their tray? Just curious.
It was after they got their lunch trays. And now you're really asking me. I can hardly remember life pre-COVID anymore, but I believe that we asked them to dump their containers into one of three buckets. They were either neutral, or they really liked it, or they didn't care for it yet. And we were knowing about the psychology of the brain and how that can impact students. We didn't put the ucky sign, and we didn't say didn't like it. We just said, I don't like it yet, was what it said on the bucket. Just kind of preparing their brains to think about the fact that they'll probably like it someday, just not this
Brilliant.
recipe yet. Yeah.
Brilliant. I love that. And I appreciate the pre-COVID days.
Yeah.
So Barb, back to some of the budgeting issues. As your participation and the appreciation for the kids who moved from don't like it yet to definitely will eat it again, does that participation jump, which you talked about earlier, does that impact your ability to grow the programming, or is that sort of a neutral?
Absolutely. The more participation that we get, the easier it is to increase staff hours, which helps you produce more to make these beautiful fresh fruit and vegetable bars that are really eye appealing, and brings in more student traffic again. And so it's like this self-fulfilling, idea that the more local produce you can bring in, the more staff you can hire, the more beautiful the salad bars are, the more kids it'll bring in. It's just like this cyclical thing, because when I was in the schools our opening week, kids were, and I'm not even exaggerating, they were giddy with excitement to see our fresh fruit and vegetable bars again. They hadn't had them for over a year and a half, and our students love our fresh fruit and vegetable bars. And they were giddy with excitement over seeing them again. So
that totally makes sense. Like at my house, the kids get broccoli and carrots. I don't have a salad bar. They get what they get. And so yeah, I could see how school would be a really like mind-blowing array of options. So that's really cool.
Yep. And when you know, like we used to cost some things out, like, okay, we wanted to change to a different turkey that was local and didn't have um, antibiotics and um, other stuff in it. And so we costed it out that it was going to cost us $10,000 extra a year in order to make this change. Well, then we just looked at our menus and our recipes and said, where can we save $10,000? What else can we change that we could make a change that would not make it any more difficult for our staff, but would be like work neutral for our staff. And there were simple things that we found, like, you know, we evaluated our recipes, and you know, we had almost a half ounce too much cheese on one of the really favorite sandwiches that we offered, and so we cut that down, and that was a couple $1,000 is what it added up to a year. So we found like 4 different items. I can't remember what they all were anymore, but we really evaluated like what we're doing, what are USDA requirements, and how much money would it save us if we did that. And so we strung together enough items that it saved us the $10,000 to make that change in the turkey that we were buying.
So
Yeah, and
if-
I'm sure that the turkey, a lot of commercial fowl, turkey, chicken, whatever is injected with water, and it really screws with the texture. And so I'm guessing that even the kids would recognize that. So, good. Are there any questions, Sarah? I think we should move to that as we're coming up on our last couple minutes, and I want to be sure to move on out of this, but open it up questions for the rest of the group. Is that all right, May or Barb?
I know that one of the things that, as you're talking, Barb, about the full meals, it can seem overwhelming for schools that haven't done full meals of recipe creations. And so one thing I want to share is that the Apple Crunch is a great opportunity to serve a farm to school meal, or a farm to school, just an apple, and buy that from a local farmer. You can do just farm to school stuff on your salad bar. You can choose what's called Minnesota Thursdays, and that's a great opportunity where one Thursday a month, you're serving your whole meal is local based. So you can use, Ferndale turkey burgers or turkey dogs. And get some local veg, and even get some, local dairy, like a yogurt or something. And I loved that you were talking about using local grains in ways that you had incorporated that in. And so those are just a few small ideas. We're not saying that, farm to school should be all in and you have to create every single menu option. But a way to kind of piecemeal into this is to think of ways where you can be creative, maybe a Minnesota Thursday or the Apple Crunch, or your salad bar is a great first step into starting that new process. So,
or maybe even it is like asking us for our cornbread recipe and making cornbread, right? Like that's a super easy thing to do, because maybe you don't have the cooler space to handle the extra produce and stuff that it takes, the storage for that. So maybe it's cornbread and it's a grain, or make your own granola. Like those 2 things are really super simple, and you don't need fancy equipment to make those. You need like a big bowl and measuring spoons and a spatula,
your favorite piece of equipment that you purchased using grant funding,
Mm,
and then we could probably wrap it up.
yeah. Well, everybody really thinks that those, it's really kind of a toss. The Rationale ovens that we've purchased with some of the grant money are really everybody's favorites, but those floor mixers too have been really awesome as well.
Is that a Hobart?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yep, those are great. The Good
Yeah.
Acre is making some videos on how to use some of those equipments, and we're definitely going to be
Mhm.
sharing those with each of you when those videos come free. With no further questions, I just want to thank Barb and Emily as they shared, the grants that are out there and some creative ways that we could use looking at the budgets that are happening in those schools. How can we support our schools? If you're a SHIP coordinator or a farm to school, or if you're on the school board, how can we support our schools in that kitchen? I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to any questions that anybody has. By all means, reach out. And I look forward to next month's conversation with Nikki Buck, Nicole, and Sarah. You guys, that's going to be guaranteed to be a good one. As we talk about cultural appropriate foods going into our schools, and just have that conversation. I'm excited to engage in that conversation in October. Oh my gosh, that's next month already. Thank you all. You have a
Thank you,
wonderful
everyone.
evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.